So, hi, I'm Dr. Nicola Perkins. I'm one of the Joint Wales Managers with Social Farms and Gardens. Welcome to our event for landowners, showcasing how some landowners have already looked differently at how they can use their land. This event is being hosted by Social Farms and Gardens in partnership with 7 other organisations under our Resilient Green Spaces partnership, working with both both the Land Workers Alliance and Shared Assets also involved in hosting part of tonight's showcase. Oh, sorry. Oh, hang on. Sorry, can you see the presentation or?
In your PowerPoint file, not the presentation, Nick. There we go, got it.
Right, sorry about that. So that's the problem with having 2 different screens. Right, there we are. Sorry about that. So Resilient Green Spaces is funded until June this year by the Welsh Government and the European Union and focuses on relocalising food systems using communities and their green spaces as the driving force. So as a community-focused partnership, we hear day in, day out that communities want to find and access land for allotments, for orchards, for small-scale growers to supply food hubs, to develop future farming skills for the future, and to improve biodiversity around the verges and the spaces that are currently lacking life. So tonight we're going to see many examples of how landowners have teamed up with communities to help them access the land they need. But before we start, we're just going to talk about who we've got tonight. So when you registered, you were asked for how long you have owned some land. Many of you have done so for 5 to 10 years or even more, but there's still a good portion of you on the call tonight who have done so for only sort of 6 months to 2 years, or even still in the process of buying that land. We also asked you how you currently use your land, and here are some of the answers. So there's a good portion that use it for grazing, some rent to neighbours, some use it for woodland or rewilding projects. Some are already in talks with the communities around how they can be the land can be transferred for their use. There's many of you that use it for vegetable production, allotments, orchards, or a small holding. And there was even somebody who isn't able to use their land at the moment, but you never know, we may be able to change that with tonight's presentation. And finally, we asked you why you're looking to open up your land to community and wider access. And this, again, is some of your answers. So for community benefit or resilience, you're getting older or you need some help or want to start planning for the future. Some of you are interested in care farming or diversifying, and some of you are already a community interest company or a co-housing community. Some of you are wanting to create local produce or it's large space and you've got space to share. And someone put it very eloquently, to have greater ecological, social and environmental outcomes. So I'm going to stop sharing now. Sorry. So now I'm going to hand over to my colleague Rhian from the Land Workers Alliance to further set the scene.
Oh, thank you, Nicola. That's great. Yeah, I guess my name's Rhian, from the Land Workers Alliance, and we just wanted to recognise that land and land ownership is really significant. It's the basis of everything else we do. It provides us with a means to produce food. Can someone give me like a wave if you can hear me? Okay, great. Somebody can't, but I'm glad that a lot of people can. Maybe you could message Alison, see if you can get any support with your tech there, Deborah. Sorry about that. But back to what I was saying. Yeah, so it provides us with the means to produce food, nourish ourselves and our communities, provides us with a home and that place of refuge and security, allowing us to develop a connection with our past, and also provides us with a degree of autonomy and a place to express ourselves culturally, socially, politically. Every landscape has a history. Whilst these landscapes are often embedded within bigger geopolitical contexts, they're also imbued with really personal stories of your grandparents' small holding or favourite walks. And whilst it's easy to acknowledge the significance of land, talking about land ownership can be a sticky subject. And I'm going to turn my camera off because that's gone really weird. Yeah, it's important to recognise that lots of people in the world have been displaced from land, often violently and with no recompense, land that was historically their home. We can see this in Britain's own history through the Highland clearances and the persecution of Quaker communities in Wales. And we see it overseas through the colonial oppression inflicted by the British state. And for people that have been affected by these things, the current status quo of land ownership can be wrapped in feelings of injustice and grief. And for many others, especially in the UK's current context, unequal patterns of land ownership prevents us from accessing vast swathes of our landscape. So there's not only a mass disconnect between people and their natural surrounding, but there's real barriers for new entrants wanting to access land for farming and for food production. Today, climate change, war, and lots of other causes, meaning that people flee their land and their homes. And here in Wales in particular, we see people forced out of rural areas due to lack of jobs and affordable housing, and others that are afraid to move in to spaces that are perceived as unwelcoming to non-white or maybe to queer people. But we do have an opportunity to change that. Now there's lots of ideas around different ways to ensure that we steward the land so that it continues to provide the food, fuel, livelihoods and education that humans have been enjoying for thousands of years. So in this session, we're going to be looking at how opening up access to land for a more diverse range of people can serve to really strengthen our rural communities and to build networks of support and solidarity between existing and potential landowners and those that rely on the land for their livelihoods and well-being. Opening up the conversation around land ownership can not only strengthen our rural communities socially, but also economically and environmentally. And I guess as event organisers, we're really excited by this opportunity and we're really glad that you're here too. Yeah, okay, so that's my bit and I'm going to hand over to
me, I think.
Fantastic.
I'll jump in. Hi everybody, good evening. I'm Mark Walton from Shared Assets, one of the partners in Resilient Green Spaces. I'm just chairing this little section of this evening's event where we're going to be looking at a number of different case studies which are going to highlight some of the different ways in which landowners are already working with communities to create new shared benefits for the landowner and for their local communities. We've got various people introducing these pre-recorded case study presentations, and just a word of warning that I think the sound levels might be a bit different as we move from case study to case study, so maybe have your fingers hovering over your volume buttons to make sure that you don't get deafened and that you can hear everything as we transition from one to the next. So I think first of all I'm handing over to Alison from Social Farm and Gardens to introduce the first of these.
Thanks, Mark.
And just to say as well that there will be there'll be time for some questions and discussion at the end of these.
Thanks, Mark. Yeah, an added word of warning in that I'm never going to be getting a career as a camera woman. So if anyone suffers from motion sickness, maybe I won't be offended if you just shut your eyes slightly during this video because it is a bit bouncy. But my apologies for that. So just, yeah, it's a video tour of the allotments to start with, and then I'll give you a little bit of history towards the end. Yeah, I might talk over a little bit of it, but some of the sound's recorded on there. So fingers crossed it'll all work.
You want to start with some of the sound then, Alison?
Say that again, sorry?
You want to start with some of the sound?
Yes, please, yeah. We can't actually see the image there at the moment. Oh, that's lovely. Can't hear that, sorry. How can we have practiced this? Yeah, literally just 2 minutes ago, it was fine. I'll talk you through it as it's on there. I'll try and remember what we're going to say.
Population in South Shropshire, the village down there. I'm just going to show you our allotments. So they're on a farmer's field, dairy farmer. So come summer, there'll be cows out here and cows through that gate there. And then the allotment site just up here is run by the Clynfwy Horticultural.
Just seems to be jumping a little bit, so I'll jump in there. So the Horticultural Society manage the allotment, and it's in a dairy farmer's fields just here. We have had issues with cows eating all the cabbages, So there is fencing all the way around now, and the gate has special locks on it, so it can't have cows coming through. But you'll just get these young gentlemen to open the gate for us and let us through. So as we kind of go on up here, you can see the different plots here. I'm sorry, that text is really small. So a standard allotment plot is 250 meters squared based on an old poles measurement of 10 by 5. These plots here are actually 15 by 9, so slightly smaller. And that was just simply, there was so much land available and so many people who wanted to have plots that was how it divvied up. And some of them, you can see there, you've got some of them kind of underway. Some of them are in a bit of a state of disrepair, and some of them are being very productive at the moment. This is just the water system there. So really lucky they've got, it was installed in a field next to one that has mains water for the cattle trough. So they just got a bit of excess piping and plumbed in some mains water onto the site, and then there's a kind of a drip system with hoses that goes all the way up and down, and they pay a nominal fee of £100 per year to the landowner for water that comes off their main system. And that it was metered for some time, but the meter kept breaking, so they weren't able to carry that on. As you can see, some of the sites have got quite a bit of infrastructure. They've been there quite a long time, so they've got fruit cages, paths, raised beds, what have you. All the plots have got water butts, but there aren't any sheds. All the sheds space and the storage is done communally. There's two, so they're flat pack containers that have been installed, so they don't need any planning permission. And then the space within them is divided up for all of the plot holders. So as the site has increased in size, there have been needed to be a second shed popped on, and kind of reduction in the amount of space. You can see a big pile of manure there as well, which the landowner very kindly donates, which is fantastic for helping out with the growing. So yeah, this is where it gets a bit bumpy. So I don't mind at all if you need to look away. But just to give you a bit of a background, I guess, about how the arrangement came about, that these allotments are on this farmer's land. So originally the Horticultural Society in the community, some members of that group were quite keen to have allotments. And there's a big estate just outside the house, and the landowner there said that they could have use of some of that space, but they very much wanted to keep it in the kind of maintain a Victorian garden. So it was very prescriptive in terms of how the plots could actually look. So that wasn't really working. Also, it wasn't particularly accessible. It was a long way from the village. Here you can see it's not too far, it's just one field away from the village. So they started to look around other options. The parish council weren't interested at all in supplying any kind of space for this. So in very true rural community style, one of the women who was interested in becoming a plot holder was at a coffee morning and got chatting with the farmer, and so like, well, we can have a little think about this. Went back and spoke with the family, says family farm, and said, yeah, you know, we can do this. So the farmer identified the site. It's one field away from the village. It's got fairly good access, you can see here now. So 4x4s can get across this field, but there's a track just at the other end of this field here that you can get through to the site on. The land the field that is being used was being used as set aside. It had been used for wildflowers, but it wasn't actually in production. So the rent is cheap. It's not an economic thing for the landowner. They charge £200 a year, but that is everything. So Horticultural Society covers all the insurance and does all the site maintenance and what have you. So there is fencing and there's a security camera and there's 2 temporary buildings, but there's no planning being required and everything could be moved if it needed to be. The site got established in 2004, but there has been an increase in the interest in it. So more land has been made available. So, and also in terms of those large plots, sometimes too big, particularly for families. So there's now 14 full plots and 18 half plots, so 32 plot holders in total. I think there's very much that kind of sense of community about how it's been set up with communal sheds and that sense of responsibility. So taking care of the whole site and the use of those shared equipment and resources, including the water and that manure that's been provided. And yeah, I mean, just in terms of the landowner for themselves, in terms of the benefits that they see for it, it's just good to see the land being used for food production. So prior to that, it wasn't being used for any food. So that's really beneficial. But then also the benefits of people's mental health in terms of growing their own fruit and veg and flowers. So that's the benefits for the landowners there. Thank you very much.
Great, thank you very much. Thanks very much, Alison. And yeah, do keep questions coming. I saw a question come up, but I think Alison answered that during the presentation. But do keep questions coming, and we'll gather those up at the end. So gonna hand over now to Anne-Marie, who's gonna talk about a CSA at Kaitan.
Oh yeah, thanks. Alison answered that during the presentation. She is a multitasker. So community supported agriculture, CSA. So community supported agriculture is where a producer, a grower, will produce veg boxes for communities who are members of the scheme, and the community members take not just the veg box but a share in the harvest of what's been grown. So it's not necessarily the same thing every week, and that they partake in the oh my goodness, the carrots didn't do that well this year idea. So this is a section of a presentation that Tom O'Kane from Kaitan did for Tuffy Cymru's Knowledge Hub, which is around leases and licenses, about this time last year. So I'll play this, and it might tempt you to the Tuffy Cymru Knowledge Hub to watch the rest of the session. This sound is significantly different.
So yeah, we're based down on the Gower Peninsula in South Wales. We're growing veg for 130 households. We host trainees every year. We have lots of volunteers who come and get involved. We engage the community in different aspects of our work. We're working with schools. So we have Jessie, who runs a schools program with us, going into schools right through the year, running different programs. And we're now doing quite a lot of advisory and outreach work to other CSAs all across the UK, really. And over this year, I've set up a webinar program called Grow Your Own CSA. So it always sounds like the punchline to a joke, but I got 5 Scots, 5 English and 5 Welsh on my course, which is a really nice mix. And we meet for an hour and a half, 2 hours every week, pretty much. We have like a week off once a month, and we look at all the different aspects of setting up a CSA. And then I invite in different speakers. I give them lots of homework in between. So that's been quite interesting for me to set up and run that program. And I'm learning a lot myself from doing it, because a lot of it is about the discussion, the issues that come up for these 15 groups across the UK who are all setting up or thinking about setting up CSAs. That's just a nice picture of
I think we've lost the sound there again, Anne-Marie. Sorry. Always back.
So we basically, as far as all lease agreements and whatnot go, this was owned by Anne Flanagan, who had bought 17, I think there's 17 acres altogether. And that field you can see is about 4.5 acres. And he wanted basically to support community growing projects and food growing projects and energy projects. And so he leased us the field on the basis that we wanted to set up this community supported agriculture project. And he basically leased it to us for a peppercorn rent, really, to start with. It was, I think, for the first 2 or 3 years, I don't think we paid anything. And then actually the agreement was that once we were established within 2 or 3 years, then we would start to pay a certain percentage of our profits would go to him in rent. But it was very reasonable. He bought the land. He's a private landowner, so the lease was between Kaitan, the company, and Flanagan and his family. And they added complication. We developed a lease with the help of Lucy and the Community Land Advisory Service. We had on the site, on the 17 acres, the rest of it you can't see, there's a sheep share and also now a cow share. And so one of the complications with our lease was access to the site, because all the groups using the site, we all share the same access. And in effect, Kaitan is leasing the field that has the access. So within our contract, we had to be very clear on water supplies, water usage. Everyone has to sort of log their own water usage, pay their own bills, or split the bills between us fairly. We decided on who was managing which bits of fence line, which bits of hedgerow. And it's worked fine, actually. Over the 7 years, there haven't been any complications, really. I think it was really clearly set out from the start. And since that, yeah, there haven't really been any complications with other site users. Another interesting thing that's happened is that was a 7-year lease, which ran out this summer. And so Ant said, look, I'm going to sell the land, because that was the agreement. We're going to lease you the land for 7 years, and then we're going to put it on the market, and hopefully you'll be able to buy it and put it into community land ownership. That was the plan from the outset, really. But it got a bit more complicated because we've now got a second site, which I'll go on to show you, which is much better quality land. It's very close by, and it's owned by the Ecological Land Co-op. And we want to buy that and also put that into community ownership, but we didn't want to do 2 fundraising campaigns. So we just kind of sat with this one and waited to see what happened, see if it did go on the open market, and didn't want us to lose the site. So he was going to put it on the open market with us as a sitting tenant and just see whether that was an option. And what happened in the end was some of our members, the sheriffs, Steve and Gwen Sheriff, they came forward and said, look, actually, we really like the project. They're regular volunteers and really engaged. They're really engaged in the veg side of it and in the cow share side of it. They said, look, we'll just buy the whole site because we've got this money at the moment. And then you can buy it when you're ready to put it into community ownership. So that is the plan for both of these sites. So this is our second site, which is actually it's only about half a mile or even a quarter of a mile as the crow flies from the other field, but it's a bit of a way round by road. And this field is an 18-acre site. We've got the front. Oh, did I put a picture in? No, I didn't. We've got basically the front section with the 1 polytunnel and the fields to the back, to the north, to the north end, to the back of the picture, basically. And then the fields to the right with the polytunnel and all the ground cover, that's another couple who are setting up a flower growing enterprise. And so the Ecological Land Co-op are leasing them 6 acres, they're leasing us 5 acres. And then the rough land around the top of our plot is another 6-acre plot, which they're also looking to lease to a further tenant at the moment, because the first tenant, it didn't work out.
So there we go, lots to consider from Kaitan, and that is just an extract from the series on the Twyford Cymru Knowledge Hub there. Mark, hand back to you.
Great, thanks, Anne-Marie, and we'll whip straight on to Rhian, who's going to introduce a presentation around enabling new entrant access.
Yeah, fantastic. I'll keep it brief. Basically, yesterday I had the pleasure of talking to John Morris, who shares his land with some new entrant land workers. And so when we say new entrant, we mean people who aren't from farming families, but want to be able to work with the land. And yeah, here's an excerpt from our chat.
Okay. Hi, John. Thank you ever so much for joining us today. So yeah, I understand that John is a landowner and you currently share your land with the Landowners. So yeah, John, do you want to tell us what's your story as a landowner? How did you come to be where you are?
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, I mean, I'm John Morris. I have a farm just outside Crickhowell in Powys. A 70-acre small farm, family farm, of which 10 acres is woodland. So it's not a big farm. It came into the family with my parents back in 1955, and my wife, Margaret, and myself moved back from Scotland. Actually, we were teaching in Scotland in 1988. We purchased the farm from my parents in order for them to have some money actually to retire, because this is the problem with some of the, the farming families. It's very difficult for the older people to move on, but we managed that. Since we've had the farm, I think we were very keen to diversify from the start. And one of the first things we did was we obviously got some good sheep and cattle, because it's a farm that lends itself to that. We converted to organic quite soon afterwards and have been organic ever since. It suits the land. It suits the way we actually operate the land as well. We converted one of the barns for tourist accommodation at a time when perhaps tourism wasn't so popular in this area. It is now, and it's very much encouraged. So we did that, and more recently, about 16 years ago, we set up an apple juice business from the farm here, called Welsh Farmhouse Apple Juice, where we press apples from the farm, but also from surrounded mainly organic orchards in the area, and we produce what we call single varieties of apple juices.
Oh, fantastic. There's quite a lot going on. That's great.
Yeah.
And what first got you interested in sharing part of your land?
Well, I suppose I should perhaps say my age as well, because as things move on, you've got to try and work out what you're going to do with the farm. Although my son and his wife run the apple juice business now, he's not that interested in the farm. So I was approached by the Langtons, a young couple in the area who were looking for land to start a small horticulture and agricultural business. We had a long discussion about it. There was a 4-acre field at the end of the farm near the A40, which was quite suitable. And I suppose the long and the short of it is, we, having seen their business plan, having spoken to them, seen how keen they are to do it, we took the step, and it is a bit of a leap of faith for farmers to do that, I know, but we took the step to rent it to them on initially on a 2-year agricultural tenancy basis. So there's a rent, annual rent to pay and things like that. Now, when you're the other thing we discussed was the rent, because I worked at the value of that field to me, really. There's a hay field, for instance. And when you rent out to a unit that's going to be probably using the land much more than if it was just a grazing field, then there is a slightly higher rent. And, that suited me, but it also, I think, suits the Langtons in that it's not overly, it's over the normal grass rent, I suppose, but it's not a rent that would deter them from making a profit anyway. So we've done that. We've run now. We're nearly 4 years in. There is quite a lot of change to the field itself. It's not just a grass field. It's growing vegetables. There's polytunnels on it. There's some accommodation for preparing the vegetables for market and things like this, and there is a caravan on the field which they can use during the daytime, so make themselves a cup of tea. So that's the difference, and we just we've gone from there, and it seems to work quite well.
Oh, fantastic. Are there any kind of particular benefits or changes that you've noticed since having the Langtons on the farm?
Well, it's very nice to have a young couple on the farm, to be honest. And the Langtons don't come naturally from farming stock. They come with other skills, and that's been really interesting actually, with their IT skills, their marketing skills, their data analysis and things like this, which Dave is very good at. So they come with new ideas. And only a few days ago, we were talking about new technologies, and they were telling me about robotics, where you can get a machine now that will weed for you. And of course, on an organic farm, it is, weeds are a bit of a heavy cost in labour. So yeah, there's a lot of new things that I've learned, that I've enjoyed actually, and we do work quite closely, in the sense that if they need to borrow the tractor at some time, or if I need to go down with the tractor, I'll go and help them out. And they've helped me out on a number of occasions where I need help with cattle or something. So, it's really been mutually beneficial, I would say. Yeah.
Oh, well, thank you very much, John. That's great.
No problem. Yes.
Fantastic. Thank you, Ryan. And thank you, John, virtually. And I think back to Anne-Marie for the final case study, which I think is also looking at allotments.
Yeah, thank you. So yes, we've whisked you to Shropshire and down to the Gower and up to Crickhowell, and we're whisking you over to the west now. This is a landowner, Mike Joseph, who very kindly recorded a tour of his land. It's a really new project. There isn't any growing happening yet, but he's just going to tell you a bit about his story. So this is a bit quiet. This is perhaps one to turn up your microphones for. Okay.
That particular occasion gave us an idea. A visit to a barn, I used to take that ideas. Raised horses raised here for the last 10, 15 years. That was really getting hammered. It was overgrown with ragweed, the consequence of overgrazing by horses and ponies. And so the idea of using this land for community growth right just the right to. So, okay. Know where we are. We'll start with a very well attended. Everyone waiting what's going to happen. And things are before a unity company people from drawing.
Anne-Marie, is there any way we could do a bit of a thing? Because it's yeah, really can't hear him, which is such a shame. It's lovely looking at the sunshine.
Yeah, sorry about that. It really wasn't that quiet earlier on. I knew it was quiet, but it didn't sound that quiet. Sorry, Mike.
Such a shame not to hear what he's prepared.
It is. So did you catch any of it, anybody?
Not really.
Not really.
Sorry.
No.
I can only hear it. I can only see a few faces on here as well because I'm showing my screen. What Mike's, we'll make this video available so you can listen to it. But Mike's essentially a smallholder. It's a 2-acre site. He started out by calling a meeting of people in the locality and has about 30 to 40 families interested in working with him on the site. He's been working quite closely with Lucy, who's coming to talk in a short while from the Community Land Advisory Service. They're on their way to a lease and hope to be growing on site this growing season. So I'm ever so sorry it wasn't that quiet earlier.
Be lovely to see the video later. Thanks, Anne-Marie. Anyway, thank you, Mike.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, the vagaries of technology. So yeah, there's a bit of time now if anyone has any questions for any of the presenters here, or any reflections from your own experience related to those presentations. Does anyone have anything they want to share or ask at this point? Either put your hand up or jump straight in. Maybe not. I don't know. Katie, I thought you might
Emma's
have...
got a hand up.
Emma's got
okay.
her hand up.
Okay, Emma.
Yeah, hello. Thanks for all our speakers so far. Yeah, we haven't had an example of community, well, a bit of an example with the Kaitan, but a community buy a purchase of land, which yeah, it'd be interesting to have more thoughts on that. Yeah, I think that was my feeling from watching thus far.
Yeah, thanks for that. Well, interestingly, we've as part of the Resilient Green Spaces project, we've been running a small grant, or a grant process to try and support people who are looking to purchase. So we know that there's quite a lot of interest out there at the moment. We had maybe 60 odd people put in an expression of interest to purchase, looking to purchase land. About 12 put in a full application from different places across Wales and for quite different sizes of operation, but you know, kind of around you know, from a few acres to a dozen to 15, 18 acres that people were looking for. So there are both examples out there, and people like Ecological Land Co-op who sort of buy land and then parcel that out to a number of smallholders quite often, who were mentioned in the Kaitan example, and yeah, to community organisations that are looking to either set up sort of local food growing projects for local people, or create opportunities for new entrant farmers as well. And Alison, you've got your hand up.
Yeah, I was just going to say, I think the focus of this event is very much on supporting the landowners who may want to keep their land, but want to open it up a little bit more. But I expect through the work that Mark and the team have been doing that we have that network of people who are looking to buy land, and many of them have already got certain models that they're using to purchase it, whether that's through finance, crowdfunding. And so there's definitely an opportunity for us to bring that together and have that as another event in the future. So yeah, keep your eyes peeled.
And we're certainly always interested to hear from people who are looking to sell land into community ownership, because as we say, we know quite a few people out there who are looking. Lucy.
Yeah, I mean, I suppose one of the most recent examples would be Group Resilience down in Pembrokeshire, who've bought Park Cerrig off the local agricultural society there. And was really pleased to see a quite comprehensive update from Vicky Moller down there yesterday, who said that they're on site and they've got some plots and communities actually growing food now, which is a really big success and an achievement. So Group Resilience in Pembrokeshire are a good perhaps example of a community organisation trying to buy land. They're looking to buy more as well. And then Food 1200 Duncan in Brecon Beacons area, Crickhowell sort of area, Food 1200, they're looking to do something similar as well.
Thanks, Lucy. And yeah, so a question from Jane on the chat: is there a minimum site size that makes it worthwhile? and I guess that could be across a range of different uses. So we looked at CSAs, at new entrant small holdings, at allotments. Does anyone have a view on minimum size?
I always have a view on things. Whether it's valid is a different matter. But I think it very much depends on the community that's interested in what your priorities are. So the next section of this evening is going to be looking at the economic benefits, the social benefits, the environmental benefits of loaning out your land. And depending on what your priorities are, it will depend on different amounts, different sizes of land that you might want available. So, the economic impact or the economic benefit will be different. You might need to be a bit more land. Whereas actually, if it's just looking at a bit of an environmental benefit, then it could be a smaller portions as well. So I think it very much depends on what you're looking for it and what the drive from the local community is as well.
Great. Okay. Any other questions, Emma?
Yeah, I'm just surprised actually that a lot of the leases that we've heard about so far are really quite short. I mean, apart from, I know ecological land co-op, that's why they, once they've purchased land, they then have 150-year leases or something like that. So, but I mean, is that a bit of a stumbling block, the length of leases that landowners are prepared to give?
I mean, I think again, it depends a bit on purpose. So, and how much investment someone's going to want to put in to that site will also be dependent on the length of the lease as well. We tend to go for longer the better if people are wanting to sort of set up a business and invest in that site. And obviously, if they're wanting to get funding for things like capital expenditure, then over 25 years is kind of usual for them to be able to secure grant funding for that kind of investment. But Lucy, I can see you want to come in on that as well.
Yeah, I mean, it is quite common at the moment, especially with sort of the transition to the sustainable farming scheme, that leases are fairly short because we don't really know how it's going to affect farmers in that transition. So yeah, there are examples of much longer leases, but I think people are just farmers and landowners are trying to minimise risk and safeguard themselves at the moment. With the transition to sustainable farming scheme from the European payments that we were operating under.
I mean, I'm just thinking if you're setting up, like, if you're starting a veg business in a pasture, there's so much investment in terms of work and to put in the first couple of years. You don't want to be having like even a 5-year lease. You almost kind of can't get what you need out of that.
Yeah,
it's just a feeling, I felt. I mean, I currently have a pasture farm, but and the guy who leases it for his cattle grazing, mob grazing, is, I mean, he wouldn't have. Well, I wouldn't have considered less than 10 years, which is what we signed, and it's scary how quickly that time passes as well.
Yeah, and I think that you sort of hit the nail on the head there of the amount of effort and whether that's sweat, capital, time, money that people are going to have to invest in the site. That they'll want that reflected some way in the length of the lease, in order to be able to sort of recoup that and make that worthwhile. Holly, you want to come in on that?
Yeah, I mean, it is a challenge for a lot of people starting out, that it's hard to find these longer leases. I'm also from Landworks Alliance, and one of our members has done is, although he has a short lease, and I think it was initially 5 years and then it's rolling, he also has a sort of a letter of comfort from a solicitor that says that if it was sold before 25 years, that the landowner would pay him back to something to reflect the cost that he'd invested in that site. So there are ways around it, but it's a really good point that it's really challenging for new entrants to get that land, and particularly for horticulture, which requires so much infrastructure.
Thanks, Holly. And so, yeah, we probably need to move on. I just saw a question from Karen in the chat, but I see that Alison's answered that, which is around sort of market rates versus rents versus kind of peppercorn rents that are quite often mentioned in some of these examples. And Alison saying there that we can kind of come back to that, and that some of that might get picked up in future presentations. So I'm thinking that it might be time to move on, and I think that's back to Alison for the next round of case studies.
Thanks ever so much, Mark. That's grand. Yeah, just introduce a couple more, and Karen, yeah, we can certainly come back to that question a little bit as well, but just want to introduce Holly, is going to talk about sustainable farming scheme, and then straight after we're going to the video from Jim at Clynfwy. So just two examples of I guess kind of supplementing any income that you might be getting from a community in terms of rent, and yeah, just kind of thinking a bit broader about what the opportunities are on your site. So Holly, take it away.
Okay, great, thanks. Can people see my slides there? The slide share. Okay, great. It's gonna I think it's going to have to be one that stays like this. No, I'll do the slideshow from the beginning, that's fine. Okay, yeah, so yeah, my name's Holly. I'm the policy coordinator for Landowners Alliance in Wales. And as Lucy mentioned, the subsidy scheme in Wales is transitioning from the existing common agricultural policy to the sustainable farming scheme. I'm just going to talk a little bit about how that might work in relation to communities. So just very basically, the overall structure of the sustainable farming scheme that's proposed is that it will consist of, as well as having minimum standards for compliance with environmental regulations, on top of that, eligibility would be contingent on meeting those standards, and then there'll be some universal actions. So the key shift that Welsh Government's doing is moving away from the system that is essentially paying per hectare for fairly minimal standards to paying in return for certain actions that farmers will have to meet in order to qualify for those payments. So these are divided between universal, optional and collaborative actions. So for the universal actions, everyone in the scheme will need to comply with these unless there's something specific about their land that means that they're not required to take out, a specific amount, a specific measure. So this includes things like reporting requirements, how planting around 10% for nature and 10% tree cover, and also includes things like covering the land over winter, and various other points. This is all in consultation, so none of it is decided. This is just the latest set of proposals. Now, on top of that, there's optional actions which anyone within the scheme could take up, and they will get additional money for that. And there's also collaborative actions, and it's in these two where we can see there have been examples put forward by Welsh Government of what they might support. So how would this fit with communities accessing land? Now, one of the options that is proposed is specifically payments for facilitating public access to the countryside. Welsh Government have been quite vague about what that means. I mean, they specifically talk about footpaths, but they also talk about hosting visits and educational and engaging with the community. There is also a specific payment mentioned for a horticultural enterprise, either as part of a larger livestock farm or in its own right standing alone. So if you wanted to set up, for example, a community supported agriculture veg box scheme, on your land, you might be eligible for this horticulture support. Unfortunately, we don't yet know anything about the sums involved, but this is just to say, look out for this. There's also, as I mentioned, the collaborative actions. So this is both collaboration across landscapes and collaboration across supply chains. So this could include, again, opening up farms for local community access, but it might also include, along the supply chains, looking at setting up some local food hub or something, and getting support for both the farms that feed into that food hub and the people that run it. And the sustainable farming scheme is, as I said, currently in transition, but we also have a few other areas of support in the meantime. So Welsh Government has grants. There is, as of last year, it's been released some horticulture grants. They had both a startup and a development grant. The development grant is actually open at the moment, and there may be another startup grant. That if you use that link that I've included in there, you'll see all the different grants available. And there's also things like small woodland grants. So it's really worth checking out. And these would not be exclusively for community projects, but they could be used to support them. There is also talk in Welsh Government of a community food strategy. However, we are yet to discover what that really means. The latest I heard is that there'll be some announcement in spring. So again, watch this space. I'm sorry, this is all fairly vague at the moment, but I'm just giving you the update on what we know. I'll stop sharing there and see if anyone has any questions.
Are you right if we come in questions in a minute, Holly? Is that okay? People, please do put them in the chat there as we're going along. That was amazing. Thanks so much, Holly. Anne-Marie, can we head over to Jim's video? We have got a recording from Jim, but he is also here to add added colour to it as we go along. If you'd like to, Jim, feel free to dip in.
I feel like perhaps I should let Jim introduce it, but maybe he's better talking about this afterwards. Let's just play the video, and this sound will be better, I'm sure.
Hi, I'm Jim Bowen, and this is a very quick 5-minute tour of Clynfwy and what we do and why we do it. Okay, so the story is, this is my family's farm, Clynfwy. We were living in this place in 1750. We've been here 70 years. My family built a mansion down there in about 1850 because William Henry Lewis, who was a farmer here, he married well and got some money and all that stuff through his marriage. They then built all these farm buildings here, which were pretty impressive back in Victorian days. My gran started in the 60s renting out the Mews Cottage, which is at the end here, as holidays in the countryside. And my mum then in the 80s started making wheelchair accessible holidays. So everything that we've done has sort of been built on the work that my mum did and my gran did all those years ago. My mum wrote notes about what people wanted on their holidays in the countryside. And so again, everything that we're doing has been based on those notes. We haven't really had any of our own ideas, but we just keep nicking other people's, asking people what they want. And generally that sort of works okay. Okay, so this is the Saddleback Cottage here. And up the top where we're about to go now is a lad loft and granary. When I came home in 1998 from having coached cricket in Kenya, the idea was to convert more of the farm buildings into accessible accommodation and doing respite holidays for local people. We got stitched a whole bunch of times with a local authority, which added all sorts of drama, but we made it in the end. So in here, these are the old bull pens, and we've got chickens. And these are rescue hens. We work with the British Hen Welfare Trust rehousing hens, and they've been let out yet today. Here they are in there. The people we support, people with learning disabilities on the care farm, love nurturing stuff and taking care of animals and nurturing them back to health, as we all do, but having the opportunities are pretty limited often for people with learning disabilities. And this is where care farms are so good, is because there's so many opportunities for doing stuff, getting involved in meaningful things and having a positive impact. And again, people with learning disabilities often don't have those opportunities. So care farms are amazing, given the potential. These are 2 other cottages. There's the granary over there, and then the ladder loft here. And from 2002 till about 10 years ago, they were just family, they were holidays. But people came from all over the country because they were so good, because they were directly wheelchair accessible, but they didn't feel institutionalized at all. People wanted to be able to come for a holiday and not feel like they were being segregated away in some space for people with disabilities, because our society should be accessible to everybody and just normal. So what we're trying to do is normalizing everything. And another thing that we like here is when visitors come, they often can't tell who the staff are and who the people we support are, because we're all in it together, which is kind of fun. In here, this is our craft room. If you can see, it's an old dairy, and we've got stuff for painting or loom making rag mugs. I'll say that again, rag rugs. Or over here, there's a potter's wheel, and then over here, we're making mosaic-y type things. There's a couple of potter's kilns here as well, and we're doing all sorts of different things. So although we're a care farm, hope we didn't get dizzy as I was walking around there. We're doing a hell of a lot of other things as well, mostly nature-based creativities and things like that. Like the dog over here. If you can see the big sculpture there, that's Noggin. He was my dog. He died about 10 years ago. And he used to hang out on the corner here and rip mudguards off people's cars. So when he passed away, a friend of mine, Mark, he made a big sculpture. And he's really tactile. And again, you know, for people with sensory issues and stuff, having a big sculpture, you can have a big old cuddle. It's a good deal. The farm's about 400 acres, but we only use about 10 acres for the care farm bit. During the summertime, we make hay, and that's something that we really look forward to doing just for that short period of time. We also make charcoal in the summertime, which is again a good thing to look forward to doing. We're going to sit through the kitchen. I haven't told people I'm doing this, so this might be a bit weird this next minute, but it adds a bit of fun. Hi everybody. Hello, one sec. Yes, I'm doing a little film for some people about what we do here. Okay. Yeah. Do you want to say what we do here just for a second?
Yeah.
What do you do here?
Huh?
What do you like doing when you come here?
Oh, I like going down to make things in the craft room.
In the craft room.
And
Cool.
the nicest stuff here I am.
Yeah. Thanks, Jimmy.
Yeah.
You've earned your lunch. Okay. See you later. Thanks, Ed. Bye. Bye. There we are. We've only got 5 minutes, and that's nearly it. Up in the garden over here, over there, we have a veg patch. We also have 250 of our own apple trees, and we juice apples for other people. It's another service that happens, and it's just at a certain time of year. It's not all the year, it's just in the autumn. But we look forward to that like mad, and then when that's over, we celebrate. We don't have to see another bottle for another year. This year we did over 11,000 bottles, which was the same amount as last year and the year before put together. And in this room here, people are locking doors. These are the apples that we've got left to sell. Normally they sell incredibly quickly, but we've got so many. Can you see that? This is our army of bottles we've got to get rid of. So there we are. Anyway, there's lots more to say about what we do and why we do it, as there is on all care farms, and I look forward to talking to you in a bit. Thanks. Bye.
Great. Thanks, Jim. Jim of Hairy Bikers fame, if anybody watched that the other week. If you haven't, go and check it out on iPlayer. Jim and his charcoal. Thanks. So Jim is around, going slightly max headroom as Rhiannon was before, but is around for questions later. Alison, I'm handing back to you.
Thank you. Thanks ever so much. Just got one more quick presentation. Very last minute. Thank you so much, Katie. I can't see her though.
I'm here.
You're there. Lovely. Katie's going to share us about a friend from it's another England based farm in Herefordshire.
Yeah, not Sweat Our Paub. So I'm Katie Trent. I work for Community Land Advisory Service with Lucy Taylor, who'll be talking shortly. So just to sort of put another perspective on about environmental benefits of allowing community groups onto your land. This is just in relation to a 75-acre farm, Woodlands farm in Herefordshire, which borders Powys. They have quite a lot of their land leased out for sheep grazing, actually. The owners are retired now, so they're not doing so much of the hard grafting themselves, but they do still run the organic orchard, and they've also got a nice set of walnut trees as well. But this farm is really interesting because they've welcomed a really long list of organisations, community organisations, initially actually to carry out wildlife surveying. And just to sort of put it in context about why surveying might be useful. So obviously to understand, you know, to understand what's happening with all the flora and fauna populations that change through time, and therefore allowing sort of detections of early warning signs to do with population declines of flora and fauna, and as well as contributing to long-term monitoring of population changes in response to land use changes and climate change. And then, of course, when you have some data, it therefore enables good systems of land management to be implemented. And there's a really long list of organisations, community organisations that have visited the farm. And I'll just quickly run through them just to give you a flavour of how many kind of community environmental organisations are out there, not just in Herefordshire, obviously, but throughout Wales as well. So they did a lot of work with Hereford Wildlife Trust, who are funded by Heritage Lottery Grant Fund for 2 years to survey the area's unique glacial ponds. And that was in partnership with Hereford Wildlife Trust, the Hereford Amphibian and Reptile Team, and Herefordshire Earth Heritage Trust. So all of these organisations kind of getting involved in looking at what's going on this really interesting farm. They had also Back to the Brink, another Heritage Lottery fund organisation for the Woodlands farm. This involved monitoring of trees. The Freshwater Habitats organisation, where people came and surveyed invertebrates and looked at the pond habitats. Herefordshire Meadows and Survey Management, and there's been funding available in partnership with the Y and Usk Foundation, Bumblebee Conservation Trust, who run the Bee Walk surveying, which is surveyed by volunteers, and of course the Bat Conservation Trust. And actually I think there's probably more of them, but basically all of these organisations have volunteers who help with the survey work and the habitat management, and through these organisations funds can be drawn down to sort of support the support the management of the land. But also, as an aside from that, the landowners have been recipients of the stewardship environmental schemes for widening their hedgerows, planting a variety of different grasses and tree planting. But they have also invested themselves, as sometimes, you know, waiting for grants can take a really long time, and there are obviously administrative hurdles to go through with that. So that's just a little bit of a snapshot about sort of some of the environmental benefits of working with community organisations.
That's lovely, Katie. Thank you so much. That's brilliant. Does anyone have any questions or reflections or insights for Jim, for Holly, or for Katie, or anything? Please feel free to jump on in or pop something in the chat. Thanks, Holly. Okay, in that case, I think we may move on. Lucy, am I all right to hang over to you, and then Delith afterwards? Yeah, lovely. Thanks, Lucy.
Thank you. I'm going to share my screen and breeze through some slides for you, and we're over time. Got to try and find the PowerPoint, actually. Many things open, sorry. There it is. So can you see that okay? Yeah, good. Okay, so just telling you a little bit about some of the support that's available through the Community Land Advisory Service, which is a programme I run for social farms and gardens alongside Katie Trent, who's just been speaking. We've been around since 2013. We're now large government funded, and we are here to support access to land for community-led green space projects and enterprises. So that it does include agriculture and also a huge range of community-led projects, including biodiversity type things and ecology as well, but a lot of it is food growing. We are generally very busy looking at leases, licenses and planning permission support for these community projects and enterprises. So yeah, that's generally what we're doing on a day-to-day basis. And just to say that we are here for landowners too, you know, we are only interested in the community-led side of things, but because of that's our funding sort of restriction. But I think we are here for landowners too, as benefits, but for us working together. So this is a slide that I nicked from a previous presentation that I've done for community groups and enterprises looking for land. These are the types of things that we tell community groups, and I thought it might sort of spark a bit of interest as to you know, the things that we are telling groups and where to look for land, you know, at local authorities, and getting them, making sure that they are set up and ready to introduce their idea and to be in the right state of governance, and that they're working robustly with a community of interest or locally. So yeah, these are the things that we do tell growers and other community-led projects and enterprises. Thought you might find interesting. These are all the different types of growing projects that there are, and then probably there may be others, but these are the ones that I'm aware of. I'm not going to go through them all, but yeah, there was a question earlier about, you know, minimum size of site and you know, for perhaps guerrilla gardening, which might not be so relevant for you as a landowner, but some of the incredible edible type projects, you know, they really are quite small areas of land, and then we go right up to sort of community farms and community supported agriculture schemes, which can operate just on as little as 2 acres perhaps, whereas, you know, like Cyswllt operating now on quite a bit more than that, more like 11 acres. So yeah, that's just an idea really of all the different types of growing that's available, and get things to think about. This is perhaps not such great news if you're trying to find growers, but these are all the sort of the biggest landowners across the UK, and you'll see that some of them, the ones with the blue arrows, do feature in Wales, and that doesn't even include local authorities and sort of public health boards and things like that, and community town councils. So there's a huge range of landowners out there. It's the picture that I wanted to give you at this stage. But I think one of the things that you can do to try and find growers would be perhaps to start by speaking to the local authority and health boards and other major landowners, like the local community and town councils, because they do have people knocking on their doors for land, and they may not be able to offer land to them. But they also have duties. You know, they need to show that they're adhering to things like the Wellbeing of Future Generations Act and the Environment Act. So they might be a good source of information as to where growers may be. And things like the Landworks Alliance, which is represented here tonight, and the Young Farmers Networks, and also the local voluntary councils, and other voluntary organisations like Mind, often know of projects wanting to set up community gardens. So, but obviously, as it's been mentioned earlier, it's really important to talk to the local organisations, those voluntary organisations out there that will be able to point you in the right direction. Just in terms of sort of governance, if you're being approached by groups or enterprises that want to access land, just to be aware that there are different types of organisations. The main two differences really are that the unincorporated groups, such as those that are just sort of constituted, they're not legal entities. So if you were to enter into a legal agreement, a land agreement with them, then you would need to do that in personal names. And incorporated ones are legal entities. They can do their own business. Personal names aren't needed, and those are organisations like limited businesses, community interest companies and co-ops. But to say that you know these organisations are very values driven, and they have social goals and tend to be, you know, not for profit or profits reinvested, I should say. So I put together earlier a table of all the different types of agreements that that might be available to you, and I'm not going to read all this out, but we'll share the slides. The types of agreements: license to occupy, a commercial lease, which is operated by the Landlord and Tenants Act 1954, and then there's the farm business tenancy, which is for agricultural businesses, and management agreements, which we are trying to sort of get into sort of the community farming, perhaps CSA type uses of land, as well as what they're more commonly used for in terms of sort of woodland management. They can be a really useful tool to think about if you're unable to transfer land, provide a legal interest to other parties, and a management agreement can be a really fruitful way of doing things. So yeah, all of these things have their different advantages and disadvantages, and it suffices to say that it's good to sort of come to the Community Land Advisory Service for some advice as to what might be appropriate. And as a landowner, you should always perhaps seek legal advice before signing anything. And just a couple of tips really on how to sort of negotiate with potential growers. Obviously be approachable and patient, because it can take time for them to be democratic amongst their group, for instance. And heads of terms is really important to get the headline main points of an agreement, a license or a lease, perhaps before you start employing solicitors and going down detailed routes. It's really good to find out what are the main points, things like rent, and what uses of land might be allowed, and the length of term. You know, if those very important factors don't match up between the two parties, then it might be something that you can't agree on, and there's no point in going any further. So it does save a lot of time to fill out a heads of terms agreement. We have a template on our website, and that's just a snapshot of it. Always think about planning permission. A lot of landowners do sort of infer the liability of getting planning permission onto sort of tenants and licensees, but as the landowner, you are responsible for the planning sort of aspect of things. So if there is enforcement, it would be on the landowner. So think about that before quite an early stage, if structures are required. And also, you know, before you even think about sharing your land with others, there are restrictive covenants and easements on sort of freehold agreements that could prevent you using land in a certain way. So just be aware of that, and to seek legal advice. And then those are our contact details if you want to speak to the Community Land Advisory Service about any of the things that I've mentioned, if you need some advice. Thank you very much.
Thanks, Lucy. That's grand. Really helpful stuff. I'm going to go straight on to Delith, if that's okay, and then we'll bring in questions for you afterwards. Delith, are you ready?
Yeah. Can everybody hear me?
We can hear you. Are we able to see you? If not, that's fine. Oh, lovely. Sure.
That's it. Yeah. Right, so yeah, I'm Delith and I work for Farming Connect. Now, if you're not familiar with Farming Connect provides farmers, landowners and foresters with support, guidance, training on all aspects of your business. So if you're not quite sure, the way to go, just everything's on our website. So feel free to go on the website and see what's suitable. Now, to register for Farming Connect, you as a landowner, you would need 3 hectares. As a new entrant who doesn't have land, we can register you in another way as long as you can prove that you've got experience in horticulture and agriculture or have a qualification. We do it case by case. So if you put down, any future plans you're hoping to do within agriculture or horticulture, I'm sure we can find you a way of registering. So I work with the venture program. Now, the venture program gives support and guidance to what we call providers, farmers most of the time, or landowners who want to cut back for some reason or another. Maybe they're coming up to retirement age, they're finding the physical work of doing physical work quite daunting. They still want to live in a farmhouse, maybe. They still want to have a little bit of control, but they want to give a chance to somebody else to sort of come in and help them. So with seekers, then we work with seekers, new entrants, people who want to go into the agriculture industry or into the horticultural industry. So we give the support and guidance for them as well. With the seekers, what we tell them to do really is to join our mailing list. So at the moment, we've got 250 seekers on the mailing list. And so what we do then is like a matchmaking service. So we tend to match the providers with the seekers. The provider needs to complete a profile. So it's just like a job advert in a way. So they would complete the details of their farm or their horticultural business and whatever, what their goals are, what they would look for in somebody to come and work for them. We would then put that on the Farming Connect website. We don't put the name of the farm or the location or anything at this point. It's on the website, on the venture page, then you'd be able to see these opportunities. And as I mentioned, as a seeker, somebody who's looking for an opportunity, you'd get email notification then once these opportunities would come on our website. So at the moment, we've got 8 opportunities. So they're sort of different in sizes, different in location as well, scattered throughout Wales, and different sectors as well. So we've got a dairy opportunity in Ceredigion. We've got 3 sheep ones, 2 in Pembrokeshire and 1 up in Montgomeryshire. We've got 2 little ones in Monmouthshire and down in Aberdeen. And we've also got 2 horticultural market gardening opportunities. There's one located in Gower. So what they're doing there, I believe, is growing salad leaves for local restaurants. So they're providers looking for somebody to come and work for them to start off with on an employment contract. And then if things sort of develop further, then they would sort of hopefully do some sort of an agreement to form a joint venture. The other horticultural then located in Powys near Llandrindod. So if you're a seeker and you see these opportunities and you think that you might be interested, you'd fill in an application form. That then would be sent on to Farming Connect. We would pass it on to the provider, who'd shuffle through them and maybe make a short list. They then would phone the seeker up for an informal chat, and if things develop further, they would go there for a visit. So both parties then can see what's involved. If things develop further, then I think, there's potential here. Farming Connect then can offer a support package to guide them along the process. Okay, so we start off maybe with what we call a surgery. So a surgery is a chance, it's a 1 hour fully funded. So you wouldn't, if you're registered with Fferm Connect, you wouldn't need to pay anything for it. I think I've seen a question clarify the seeker. The seeker is somebody who's looking for an opportunity. Okay, so the provider is the landowner. So the seeker would be the one that's actually coming into the opportunity. And they then, so say they would actually, so say if it's a horticultural opportunity, the provider would own the land. The seeker would be the one that's actually growing and doing the sort of manual work, and with the opportunity in Gower, they would be marketing it and doing it, you know, all the sort of manual work, the day-to-day running of it then. Okay, so I hope that answers your question. So as I mentioned, first would call the guidance and support we do is a surgery. So with a surgery, we can have a business surgery, a financial surgery with an accountant, or a legal surgery. So it's a 1 hour fully funded slot. So with a legal surgery, you'd be able to go over the different types of contracts, any questions you've got legal wise, that's the opportunity. It's either done on the telephone or over on Zoom, either way. So that's the starting point of the support package we've got. You can then move on to what we call a business assessment, which is half a day's worth with a business consultant. It's like a feasibility study to see if the plans or what you're, you know, want to do will actually work, or is it worth doing. We've then got mentoring program where you can access up to 15 hours from a mentor. Different mentors, again, covering different topics. So again, if you're interested, go onto the Fferm Connect website, have a look at the mentors there. Again, you know, that's all fully funded as well. And then the last support we do then, if you do find a match, we offer then a full business plan and also a legal agreement. The legal agreement would be funded as well. So a solicitor would come out, and also a business consultant with the two parties, the provider and the seeker. So a legal agreement would be drawn up that's geared towards each individual. It's not an off-the-shelf agreement, so everybody has an input on what they want to put in it, if they want to put any clauses or anything. And also the business consultant works along with the solicitor and the provider and seeker. So, you know, you've got the business plan then. So say, for example, if you want to go and borrow to the bank or whatever, you've got that to hand. That's basically the support we've got. So yeah, if you've got any questions or queries, happy to answer them. Or if you go on to the Fferm Connect website, my contact details are on there. So you're more than welcome to give me a ring tomorrow or drop me an email and I'll answer any queries. Thank you.
Thanks so much, Delith. Any questions for Lucy or Katie or Delith? Very comprehensive introductions. Thank you so much both, because you do huge amounts of work, and to be able to rattle that off in 5 minutes is quite an achievement. Thank you so much. I'm gonna just pass over to Anne-Marie to kind of close this bit of the session. It feels a long time ago that we started with Nick's introduction and Rhiann's kind of affirmation of land ownership, but hopefully we can draw it together a little bit. Thank you so much to all our presenters then. Anne-Marie, is that all right?
Yeah, that's great. It's a lot of information. A lot of information given out to you. And we will make all those slides available and the videos so that you've got those to watch back as well. So yeah, that's the end of the session. There's been a lot of different elements, and as Emma said before, there's also things that we've not included. You saw the list that Lucy presented earlier. We're going to go a bit less formal. So if you're having to get off, then please feel free to do so. But if you want to hang around, if you want to request a chat with anybody in particular, Jim's still here. If anyone was particularly interested in chatting a bit further to Jim, you can give us a wave, Jim. Hey. Or if anyone's got any particular questions on anything that's happened, then unmute and speak forth.
I might just stop the recording now as well, unless there's anything that people want on public record. There we go. We'll free it all up a little bit. Thank you.